Dracula wakes from his coffin. Enchanted by this music. The perfume of the ballerina, the scent of the blood of the ballerina. He rises. Enchanted. Hungry for blood, yes, but for love, yes. He moves towards the music. He moves towards the house from where the music is coming from. He walks towards the house. He climbs the step. He peers through the window. He's enchanted. And he sees the girl dancing there. The music stops. The girl stops. Something strange, the air is getting colder. She runs towards the window. Shabba! Nothing there. Music. Except for the smile of Dracula. He enters the room. Approaches her. Reaches out. Takes her in his arms. They dance. Something like that. I confused the story a bit. I always said that I was born dancing. I was born with that terrible twitching disease which we call the St. Vite's dance. The cure was to stay in a darkened room. No light, no color, and no sound. So when I eventually recovered from this twitching, if I've ever recovered from it, and when the lights were turned on, and when the music began to play, come on along, and let me take you by the hand. Come on along, listen to the band. Well, of course, life was just fabulous, full of color, and I danced. Dancing for me wasn't just expressing myself, it was my way, my hope, my intention of giving pleasure to the audience. After auditioning, firstly for the Royal Ballet School, where I thought I'd given a rather good audition. At that age, we think we're rather good, don't we? But I was rather dismayed to get a letter from the principal from the Royal Ballet School saying, "Dear Mr. Kemp, thank you so much for coming to the audition on September the 4th last. However, we regret to inform you that we find you both temperamentally and physically unsuited to a career as a dancer." Of course, I took no notice. Imagine if I had taken notice, what the world would have lost. Heavens.
Egli è discendente di William Kemp, il famoso clown di Shakespeare, e come il suo antenato, da giovane, si trovò costretto a fare il buffone per sopravvivere. Nei suoi spettacoli vi è il fascino delle Folies Bergère, l'emozione del circo, l'erotismo del rock and roll e il fasto della morte. Tutto ciò per togliere il respiro al pubblico. Numerosi aneddoti segnano la sua vita. Sir Alec Guinness lo dichiarò pubblicamente un genio. E Sir John Gielgud, Rudolf Nureyev, John Cage, Andy Warhol e Dame-Marie Rambert sono solo alcune tra le tante persone importanti che riconoscono le straordinarie qualità di Lindsay Kemp e del suo teatro unico al mondo.
My father was a sailor. All my family were sailors, and all of them drowned. Everyone drowned at sea. My father, his 7 brothers, my grandfather, all his brothers, extraordinary. But I was sent to a nautical college to follow in their footsteps. But in order to survive, I found I had to entertain.
I love him so, he'll never know. All my life is just despair.
It's a little bit of shuffling. Movements are such special things, incredible gifts. It's terribly important. There's too much when one looks as if one's moving because one is enjoying moving, not that one is telling a story. I was very confused about what you were supposed to be when you started to dance with Neil. It wasn't clear. Everything that we say on the stage must be incredibly clear.
You set out to shock at all?
No, I don't. I set out to thrill, to excite, stimulate, surprise, and give the audience a vast amount of pleasure. I feel that every moment on the stage has to be more surprising than the previous moment. You know, it wasn't my intention to shock. I hate to offend anyone. You know, I want to please and delight. But like I said, I have to do it on my own terms. And sometimes people do find that a little bit shocking. Sometimes people find that the things that give me a great amount of pleasure, for them is a little bit upsetting. sexy. Keep it really sexy. Back to fertility. Let it go. Ah. Great lake of semen. Sex, of course, plays a very large part in the saga of Salome. So right at the very beginning, we have the sexual ceremony, the initiation. Out of the initiation comes the birth of the child, which is a snake. I mean, that comes as a bit of a surprise.
You've got a real snake.
A real snake, which later grows up to be Salome.
Much of my movement, I've inherited from the movement of the waves, in the same way as Isadora Duncan inherited much of her movement from the movement of nature, the movement of the trees in the breeze. But for me, it is especially the waves on the sea, and the danger of the sea is another thing. Rising and falling, living and dying, being reborn. Like the sea, the wave that lifts, the wave that falls, the wave which is like a great tsunami, which is a vastly dramatic and terrifying, sometimes beautiful, always beautiful, even when terrifying, but sometimes calm and soothing. Sometimes tranquil. My father was drowned at sea, and I still hear his voice calling to me, giving me encouragement, complimenting me from time to time. I feel helpless. I feel happy that I'm close to him, that I hear his voice transmitted, as the legend says, through the sounds of the gulls, quack, quack, those souls of drowned sailors that are metamorphosed into these great white birds. My mother was a party girl. I was brought up in the company of sailors, parties. They would drink. They wouldn't get drunk, but they would drink, but they wouldn't be sober. It was a very joyful atmosphere, and I tried alcohol at a very early age and enjoyed it, and I was very, very happy. Years later, of course, I became dependent on alcohol. It became almost my killer. During the 60s, of course, I experienced and enjoyed immensely to smoke dope and to enjoy, hallucinogenics. I found myself through hallucinogenics. I found my voice. I found who I was. Before I took LSD, I always pretended to be somebody that I'd like to be. With this courage, I risked, like deadly things. Of course, my performance was effective. The public were kind of aghast because, like my performance in Flowers, it was a reality. My pirouettes were numerous, but there were times when I pirouetted too far to the edge of the stage, and down I went. The spotlight operator had been instructed that wherever I go, that follow spot must follow me. And sure enough, when I went into the orchestra pit, the follow spot followed me. There was silence for a minute, and then a bloodied hand appeared from the orchestra pit. Bloodied, and a bloodied arm. As I reached out, not to be outdone, I pulled myself back up onto the stage and continued with the performance. The next night, of course, when the audience came back, bringing their friends, they were a little bit disappointed because I didn't repeat the same act. And so I managed miraculously to give up booze. And LSD, not only did I find myself with LSD, but it enabled me to walk on water. And even when I stopped taking LSD years ago, it's harder to get nowadays, I still walk on water, and the audience sees that. It involves not only, of course, the feeling, the sensation, the belief that one is walking on water, but the technique involved on making the feeling into a reality, a visual reality. So I think the effect of LSD, even after all these years, hasn't actually worn off, you know. Now I don't do that stuff. My mother came many times to see Flowers, you know, and she was never shocked. I think maybe the Genet's book, Notre Dame de Fleurs, some people would find a bit shocking, like some people find, you know, homosexuality shocking. Some people find the nude, which is the noblest form in art. But some people find that shocking, but I don't think those people were in my audiences. People came knowing that it was Genet, and knowing that it was the work by me. I'm a poet, so I think they came expecting poetry and beauty. I think so. In all the years that we ever performed Flowers, I don't remember anyone coming out of the theatre being shocked. They came out of the theatre being transported, transformed, and with a better understanding many had, certainly of homosexuality. It suddenly became for them a kind of an acceptable form of love. My stories are all love stories, you know. I'm obsessed with love, with romance. I think it's love that we really are very short of at the moment. We're living in a rather loveless world. I thought I was able to do what Jenny maybe would have desired. At the same time, I was very fortunate in having been left the sum of £500 by a rather homophobic aunt. She would have turned in her grave if she'd known what I was about to spend the money on. I took a train up to Edinburgh from London, and there, taking a leaf from Pasolini's book, I trawled the gardens in Edinburgh, the Princes Street Gardens, and picked the cast, muscular, tattooed, handsome males, Jean Genet lookalikes. And with these men, I began to create through improvisation. Within a few moments of the opening, the doors at the back of the stage were flung open, and during a stroboscope sequence, the police arrived. It was a bust. The dancers, naked, scampered amongst the audience to take refuge. The police running around the stage. We weren't charged, and the police remained to enjoy the show with their dogs. And the publicity, of course, led to a very, very successful season indeed, to a small experimental theatre, very big success, a lot of publicity, which led us to the West End, and after a while in the West End to Broadway, and from Broadway around the world. The public loved us on Broadway. Unfortunately, it was just one critic, Clive Barnes, an English queen, you know, that had once, a few years before, had introduced me to Charles Weidman, the dancer, when he was in London, you know, as England's, you know, great new hope. However, when he became the leading critic of the New York Times, and he came to see Flowers, I mean, he changed his mind. He'd gone off me. And just one notice closed the show. We love New York, as you can see on our T-shirts, and we didn't want to leave. And we didn't. We stayed on for quite a while, hand to mouth, again, you know, sleeping on people's floors. We started off, you know, staying at the Pierre Hotel, and then we moved to the Baltimore, and then somewhere else, down, and eventually people's floors and so on. But during that year, we put on several productions off Broadway, one of them being Salome. And I have to say, again, I have to drop David Bowie's name, that it was really thanks to David Bowie that we were able to do Salome, because he, not only did he lend us $250, but with which I bought a lot of white silk. I think we could have managed without the $250. I think the white silk we bought for an earlier production, didn't we? We recycled it, and all the costumes were made from this white silk curtain for Salome. Andy Warhol and Truman Capote came one night to see the show, again in a little basement theatre. with no, the Vogue. With Diana Vreeland. Diana Vreeland was very impressed. She came round after, the place was, was rat-ridden, flea-ridden, this place, freezing. But she came backstage and she said, oh, tell me where you have your costumes made, in Paris or New York. In fact, we had made the costumes, and all this white silk was simply pinned together or glued together.
Why did you play Salome?
I couldn't find anyone else. When I first did the production in New York, and I looked all over for a lady that would be suitable, that would be sexy enough, would have a good voice, who would be well known, and who would work very cheaply. Well, I couldn't find anyone, and I mean, I really did look, and I saw lots and lots of ladies. If they were beautiful, then the chances were that they couldn't dance. Women are often rather reluctant to fall on their asses in public. And with my company, the all-important thing is to risk falling on one's ass constantly. That is, to risk falling off the high wire, to risk being a total failure. There aren't very many women clowns, there never have been. I think that maybe women are a little afraid to abandon their dignity. And with us, it's very important sometimes to permit oneself to be dreadfully undignified.
But you don't set out to look beautiful, do you? I mean, you're talking about getting a beautiful woman to play it. I mean, your makeup is not beautiful makeup.
It's a very simple makeup. It's just, I just highlight my eyes. It's just who I am, what I am, and I just hope that that 12-year-old infant will kind of shine through my face.
Soho was marvelous in those days. I managed to get a job sometimes in striptease clubs directing. But I'm delighted to be working in striptease clubs directing shows because it gave me an opportunity to direct shows. And I was always attracted to that world anyway of the burlesque. And that world has filtered into, much of what I do, that kind of, the sexiness of it, but also the tawdriness of it, the poorness of it, but the need of the performers to please an audience. I worked in a lot of clubs besides those striptease clubs. Rough clubs in the north of England, where I'd appear in pink tights and a top hat, and I'd sing, "Every little fancy does you good," music hall songs. A rough audience that really wanted the strippers, They didn't want a man in pink tights at all. They wanted the girls. So in order to succeed, in order not to be drowned under their beer, which they would have thrown at me, I had to find a way of putting them under my spell. I've got you, under a spell, which I'd learnt at a boarding school. In order to survive the blows of the bullies, I found a way of putting those boys under my spell. And the spell, the hypnotism, the mesmerism also has been my most useful tool And I never left the stage in any of those really rough bars, you know, pubs, without a lot of applause. Indeed, I became very popular on the circuit. Change colour. I don't know why I have problems talking about German or cinema directors, and I don't know why I have this. Probably because I don't know enough, and probably I never really got to know a director well enough because I was in character. Otherwise, I was keeping my distance because so many directors were kind of impatient. Ken Russell was the most impatient of directors. I love Ken Russell, and God knows I love so many of his films, and he loved me. And he chose me for a film called Savage Messiah after seeing me performing. Strange enough, in the little David Bowie show, the turquoise pantomime at the tiny Mercury Theatre, and he hired me. And he was very admiring, except when I began to work, oh God, he kept telling me to get a move on. I was too slow. You may have noticed that I take my time. And he kept reminding me that film, you know, stock is very expensive. And would I please get a move on? He made me nervous, so I had problems, therefore, also remembering my lines, which took up even more time. I mean, it was like a star. A star is allowed to kind of not remember a line. And can we do that again, please? You know, and had 3 dozen takes if necessary. But I wasn't a star, well, not in those days. And I wasn't given the time to have more than one take. I was taking up too much stock. There was a scene in the film where I had to look through a series of drawings by Henri Gaudier-Breschke. And they were originals. And I was very, very moved as I looked at each drawing. And Ken would say, Lindsay, for fuck's sake, get a move on. You know, and I thought that it's just so beautiful. And finally, you know, if you see the film, it's Ken Russell's arms which come through my armpits. It's Ken Russell's great hands like that turn the Breschke, the most beautiful drawings I'd ever seen. Like that. Impatient as hell. I was reminded of Truffaut's Day Into Night. There's another marvelous film where he would say, go through that door. No, not that door, that door. And I kept going through the wrong door because he kept saying, it's not that door, it's that door, and so on.
For someone who'd always wanted to be famous, do you miss out in that people can't really recognize you in the street?
I hate that part of it, you know. I spend so much time walking up and down Kensington High Street hoping that someone will notice me, especially when I'm rather depressed, you know. And they never do unless I wear a white face and ostrich feathers in what's left of my hair.
You got amazingly good reviews for this, but you also got the odd one who slightly knocked it all. Does that anger you, upset you?
It used to, but it doesn't anymore. I mean, the critics, most of them are awfully silly. I no longer care about them. It used to worry me, you know. But now they're also fabulously confused. You know, one critic the other night described me as being fat, another one described me as being silly, one described me as looking like Joey Brown, another one said that I sounded like Peter Sellers' Blue Bottle, another said that I reminded him of Isadora Duncan, another of Sarah Bernhardt, and so on. I don't any longer take the critics seriously, and I don't think that I need them anymore.
Well, life is full of little disappointments. But this is a bloody big disappointment. You know, after Dracula was the production that I'd wanted to do more than anything. After so many years of not feeling terribly inspired, we've spent a lot of time on it. The costumes are designed, the production was cast, the music, marvelous music by Sergio Rendini and Arturo Anachina was practically finished, and we'd even booked our accommodation when, oh no, thank you very much, it's all off. With very little explanation. Except probably it was because I didn't put the Syndico's girlfriend on the stage. It may not have been the Syndico's girlfriend. Maybe it was, you know, a friend of a friend. However, then I heard hints that, well, if you don't use her, maybe, you know, you won't get the money to do the production. And so on. Okay, I thought, well, let's put her behind a tulle and she can be a voice, a marvelous voice. But no, that wasn't acceptable. She wanted to be on the stage. So maybe that was the reason we've lost it. We'll find someone else, we'll find another producer. But Dracula was a role which I'm really ready to play, and I want to play, and it probably will be one of my greatest roles. Well, I can't avoid those death scenes. I'm attracted to death. I mean, all poets are attracted to death for one reason or another. I mean, I do find death, in its way, attractive. I like the images of it in the same way as so many artists before me, the pre-Raphaelites particularly. I mean, reveled in the images of death. When I think about death, feels very, very, very close indeed. I therefore avoid thinking about it. I mean, I'd rather be alive than have one piede in la tomba. So I avoid thinking about it. I've made a few little notes about the music I'd like to be played and that kind of thing, but I would hope that I'd have a few more years yet, because God, I've only just begun. I mean, I have so much more to do. I was talking earlier about Dracula, which is a project that I really want to do. But I mean, I really feel that my best dance is yet to come. As mature as I am is probably my maturity.
Lindsay, your association with David Bowie goes back a long way. When did you first join your company?
Oh, heavens. I think probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I had heard him on the radio, quite by chance. I'd heard this magnificent voice, which later turned out to belong to a young man called David Jones, you know, singing some rather absurd song about someone catching butterflies in apple trees. And it wasn't so much the song, it was just the voice that had immense appeal to me, and I felt that I had to find it someplace, use it. And at that time I was being managed by Brian Epstein, who of course knew of David, and brought us together. I'd heard more of his songs during the time that I first heard him and then met him, and each one seemed to reflect more of the kind of thing that I was talking about in my own work. I mean, the same kind of themes and things, the same kind of style. Of course, he was using words, now he's using gestures. And it turned out that the night that we did meet, which was backstage after performance, he'd already seen my show many, many times and had gone away already very inspired and very influenced. So already it had become a kind of collaboration.
How long was David with your company?
About 2 years, off and on. But then we continued to work together. I mean, I began to do more work for him. I directed his last concert at the Rainbow, you know, the Ziggy Stardust show, which was marvellous, needless to say. We were performing Flowers in Edinburgh at the time, and he sent me a wire saying, hey, come to London quick. I mean, we didn't have the fare to get to London quick. But we did get to London and couldn't quite believe the spectacle of Bowie standing in this vast theatre, this vast auditorium, the Rainbow, with also a vast amount of pound notes in his hand to spend on a production, which was indeed very lavish, and which the critics said was supposed to be the beginning of it all that theatre gay or whatever rock.
Lindsay, David Bowie used a lot of mime and makeup in his stage performance. Do you think he's borrowed very heavily from his experience with your company?
Well, I gave him a lot. Yeah, he didn't borrow them. All those things were gifts. I showed him originally how to make his face. I think he credits me for having taught him the importance of looking marvellous as well as sounding marvellous. He always sounded to me like heaven, but he had to look like heaven. And of course, in a very short time, he worked incredibly hard. Everyone knows he has an immense amount of energy. And he just developed what is also a very fine mime technique. He isn't a mime, because mimes are born mimes. With a mime, like myself, my gestures, my face is my way of communication. For me, words are the next best thing. You know, mime is my way. And with Bowie, of course, his music is his way. But his look, image, of course, we know has helped enormously.
So in effect, over that period, you virtually both worked for each other?
Yes, yes. I continue to do work with his costumes. I designed his clothes for quite a while and suggested at one time that maybe he should do something with his hair.
I wasn't going to do the David Bowie bit because I've talked about David Bowie so much, you know.
That's what he thinks too.
So you think I shouldn't do it? No, forget David Bowie. All right. And just before I went onto this tiny stage, confronted by a very tiny audience, I noticed Marcel Marceau sitting in the front row. Much of what I was going to do in this performance, of course, was derived from Marceau. I saw him, was enchanted by him. I wanted to be like him. I painted my face like him, and I wore a Breton shirt like him, and I walked onto the stage, and fuck. There he was, sitting there. So I was obliged to change everything, improvise for an hour. The show was called Clown's Hour, you know. After the show, there was a knock, knock, knock on my door, and the stage doorkeeper said, "It's a Mr. Marceau to see you." And I thought, shit, this is when the shit hits the fan. I mean, he'd know. I mean, much of that material was his. I stole it. I didn't borrow it. As Picasso said, you know, he doesn't borrow, he steals. The mediocre borrow and the genius steals. I've done a lot of stealing in my life, God knows. And a knock on the door, and he came and he put his arms around me, he embraced me. And he said, but you are a poet. And he said, look, I'm forming my company and I would like you very much to join me. Of course, you need a few lessons. I mean, and you also need a pair of hands. A pair of hands. At that time, I didn't have hands. Marceau said, but of course you will need hands. Hands, but I've got hands. Granted, when I was a dance student, one of my great teachers, Leder, always called me Frankfurter or Salsiccia because my hands resembled sausages. After the season in Edinburgh, Marceau had a season in London at Sadler's Theatre and invited me every day for a month to give me lessons at the Savoy Hotel. You know, he'd ring the bell and ask for orange juice and he'd roll his sleeves and he'd have these gold things like that. And we would start work, and I got so fed up, working on my hands. But it's thanks to him that I have hands. I have butterfly wings, the waves on the sea, the flames from hell, hands which are delicate, sensitive, loving hands, aggressive, monstrous hands. The hands were a gift from Marceau. Of course, Marceau taught me a great deal more besides giving me a pair of hands. He told me how to be economical with movement, how to be simple, and how to create illusion, how to make the invisible visible.
Happy little feet that dance all day, lonely little heart with lots to say, stepping footprints on your mind, offering thoughts of Columbine. Bang the drum and blow the bugle call, Pierrot takes the stage to play for all, for here's a life his fortune rules, forsaken by his Columbine. Pierrot, we love you, Trepanny Pierrot loves us too. Pockets of gladness, gay time eyes, comical hero, Trepanny Pierrot. To tap his feet to greet dear Harlequin, the hearts of both so keenly hard to win. A patchwork frame of tears and wine, the nectar for cruel Columbine. Up proud the three and leave the stage forlorn. The puppets cold, their faces sad and drawn. Relive each trial of rise and fall, the love which lacks between us all. Trepanny Pierrot, we love you. Trepanny Pierrot loves us too. Pockets of gladness, gay time eyes, comical hero, Trepanny Pierrot. Trepanny Pierrot, we love you. Trepanny Pierrot loves us too. Pockets of gladness, gay time eyes, comical hero, Trepanny Pierrot.
Years ago, I went to Scotland. The Scottish Arts Council, for the first and last time, sponsored several of my performances. And the matrons in Gala Shields were quite appalled. They said, oh, well, that's not mime, you know. When we did these one-night stands, the Scottish Arts Council tour, the show called the Turquoise Pantomime, which the press billed as blue pantomime, blue show upsets matrons of Gala Shields and Musselbrenner, and those people were appalled. They were supposed to serve us tea after the matinee. And there was one occasion, and they wouldn't give us our tea. They wouldn't give us the meringues. I pelted them with them. It looked fabulously seasonal. Those ladies in their fur coats, school teachers and headmasters' wives, with this meringue falling from their fur hats and things. That's not mime, they said. That's not mime at all. I mean, they probably expected me to kind of walk against the wind for hours on end, you know, or walk up invisible staircases. And of course, my mime isn't anything like that. For me, mime in the theatre must be real, and reality is sometimes frightening. I might play Camille next. Maybe the Royal Shakespeare Company might phone me up and ask me to play Lear's Fool. I can remember my words as well nowadays. I love it, talking. Words. I love it. Some people think I'm impure because I open my mouth. It's a terrible thing.
The Red Shoes was probably one of the most marvelous movies ever made, wasn't it? I think it was quite the most beautiful. Powell and Pressburger were the two of the greatest film people ever. And I'm afraid it is, or I'm grateful to them, that pushing me where I am today, it was seeing that film that absolutely, I knew I was going to be a dancer anyway, but it absolutely made me decide there and then that this is the world that I have to be part of. This is my world. I was aged 10 when my mother took me to see that film. And of course, it was responsible for making many children of my generation follow into the ballet.
Here is a gift of space. Would you like some space? Now try drifting in out of each other to a weaving light. Would you like some space? And if you see someone's eyes who are particularly attracted, then stop a while and stare at them. Now, if we bother to make a gesture, then this gesture must take us even further towards ecstasy. Think of your gestures as being journeys. Oh! And respond. Oh! Oh! Yeah! You've never seen angels before. The surprise, oh, stops the world. Oh, and now bending the knees. Oh, and exaggerate the mood. What is happening as we find ourselves falling? Oh, like mothers weeping in grief over their dead children over the graves. Oh!
When I teach, this is what I teach. I teach what I know. I teach what I feel. My teaching, of course, has a very important element of gymnastics, of the physical movement. I endeavor to help the students, the dancers, tune their bodies. And then I show them how to communicate with their bodies, how to project, how to reach out to the public, and always to be truthful, always to be honest, always to be helpful, and where possible, always to be entertaining. So much dance and theatre today is terribly boring. It's no longer entertaining, and it's lost its purpose. It's lost its usefulness. There are exceptions, I shouldn't generalize, but I find that mostly in the theatre I'm quite bored, and I haven't changed one bit when I leave. I think when the audience leave a performance, they should be changed. Their experience, this incredible odyssey that they have just experienced should change their lives. I sound very grandiose, I know, but this is my endeavor, which is really to bring light and to lift the spirit of the people, not just in the room, but in the street and wherever I go. In other words, I am always on, especially when there's a camera. You know. In England, there are seasides, where old people go to retire, very kind of conservative, No, I've never considered retiring. I have no reason to retire. I have no desire to retire. I'm a dancer. Dancers don't retire. Dancers die. And I'm not ready to die yet. But of course one never knows. But I mean, I haven't made plans or anything. I mean, I'm making plans for my next performances and so on. Yeah, I can wear them at Halloween parties, I suppose. Anyway, I need Dracula, and I need another success, which I really think Dracula would be a success. You never know, you know, but I just got a feeling that with a title like Dracula's Kiss, I mean, it can't fail. Lindsay Kemp in Dracula's Kiss with this all-star company. It can't fail. Well, you got to take risks. I really don't think that's much fun without the risk. I don't think. And one should aim to have a spectacular life and to encourage others to kind of live a spectacular life. What was that just the comedian Williams as Robbie Williams said, you know? When Robbie Williams was on his way out, he said, look, you know, we got to live spectacular lives. I know I did. That's better.